Good afternoon, folks. This is Robert Chappell, Executive Editor at Madison365 with your daily update for Tuesday, January 26th. The COVID stats today, a little disappointed in the amount of testing, to be honest with you. We're still kind of lagging behind when it comes to new test results, which is to be expected at this point. I mean, what we're reporting every day is the number of people who are tested for the first time or who've tested negative before and are testing positive for the first time. So eventually, like 3 million people have been tested. So, but still, we're at the point now where like the numbers are like, I'm not sure they're telling us the full story. So what we have today is 5,448 tests, which still feels like a lot. I mean, there was a time, when it was barely over 1,000 a day, right? So we still really want to be like 12,000. But, we're still running more tests than that, obviously, but a lot of them are repeat tests, so they aren't showing up in the daily data. But still, 5,448 is not enough. We have 1,301 new cases today, so we're back over 1,000. But that also puts us at 23.9% of today's new tests are positive. That's even more than it was yesterday. So that's not great. But again, that daily percentage is not that dispositive. That's not that important a number. You want it to be low, but it's not a make or break number because, again, those 5,448 tests were actually performed and processed over the past like 3 or 4 days, right? So that to take those 3 or 4 days worth of tests and put them all in one day doesn't mean that much. So when you actually put them on the days that they were done and add them to the tests that we had already reported from those days, from Monday and Sunday and Saturday, what you get is 20.1% of the people who are tested over the past 7 days tested positive. That's 1 out of 5. That's a lot. It's less than it was yesterday. Okay. Yesterday it was 20.6. And, a couple of days ago it was 21.2. That number has been as high as 30 at one point. So 20.1, still too high, but getting better. We like that. Now, the other number that irritates me a little bit today is that of all the tests in the past 7 days, not just the people, but all the tests, which takes into account all the people who get tested multiple times, is 6.1. Still not a terrible number, but what I don't like about it is that's been the same for the last 3 days. It's kind of stuck at 6.1. We need that to keep going down. We need that to get to below 3 if we can, before we can. I mean, to me, everything I've heard, in the last 10 months of learning more about epidemiology than I ever thought I would know, once you're down below like 3%, that's when you have a pretty good sense that you got the thing under control, right? That's kind of the number that like some states use 3 as the cutoff. This is when we close schools, is when we get down to when we get up to 3, we close schools. When we get down to 3, we open schools, that kind of thing. We're not doing that in Wisconsin, really, but just as a kind of an indicator of when I would feel comfortable knowing things are pretty well under control, if that gets down to 3. So 6.1, still don't love it. I love that it's been going down. After Christmas, after that little Christmas bump, post-holiday bump, it got up into the 8.5 range. So down to 6.1 is good. I'd like to see it keep going down. So keep doing what you're doing, everybody, because all this stuff is headed in the right direction. And it's because we are doing it. The government's not helping us out. There's no, very, very little in the way of mandated, statewide restrictions. We'll talk a bit about the mask mandate in a second. But there are some local restrictions on businesses being open and stuff like that, but they're not really all that restrictive. Like you go to Target on the weekend, it's still pretty, still a lot of people there. But a lot of us are choosing to act the way we used to act back in March and April of last year, and we're keeping this thing under control, whether or not the government's helping us, or whether or not the government's restricting things like we're doing it ourselves. Which brings me to the mask mandate. If anybody else knows anything different, go ahead and comment. But from what I can see right now, having been working on a bunch of other stuff and doing kids in school and stuff today, it doesn't look like the state Senate has voted yet on the mask mandate resolution. There's a joint resolution that would repeal the mask mandate. They're due to vote on it today. If they approve it, my understanding is that it would be veto proof because it's a joint resolution, and which is an arcane thing that a joint resolution can't be vetoed, whatever. But it basically would invalidate it's not about the mask mandate particularly. It would invalidate the emergency order, which allows for the mask mandate. There's a little bit of a hoop jumping exercise. But because of that, it's a joint resolution between the two houses, and therefore would not be subject to veto because it's not a law, or it's not a bill, it's a resolution. So anyway, so if they do that, the mask mandate would be lifted. And that is I think it's a terrible statement from the government. It's a terrible signal from the legislature. But in practical terms, it doesn't really have a lot of effect, I don't think. This is just my take on it. That the mask mandate, the statewide mask mandate, is not being enforced anyway. So to repeal it is not really going to change anything. There are very, very, very few people. I think this is my take. I haven't done a survey on this or anything like that. So it's not data. This is just my gut. And you tell me, in the comments, tell me if you think I'm wrong about this. But I think there is nobody in this state who is wearing a mask because the governor tells them to. Right? A lot of us are wearing masks because we understand the science, and we're trying to do right, and we're trying to help people out and not spread this virus. And a lot of people are not wearing masks because they don't think it's a big deal, or they're of that sort of individual liberty sort of thing. But I don't think repealing the mask mandate will change either of those behaviors meaningfully. Right? Also, several localities still have local mask mandates. Dane County is still local mask mandate. I think Racine County's, or maybe the city of Racine still has one. I know Milwaukee County does. City of Milwaukee. I'm pretty sure that's still in effect. So, the biggest population centers are still have mask mandates. And I think even without those, if Joe Parisi let the Dane County mask mandate expire, I think most Dane County people would still wear masks. It's just kind of a habit at this point, right? So again, I would not. Okay, this is an interesting comment from Jess. Jess Starks says, I appreciate this comment. Thank you. And I'm curious about it. A state mandate helps me to know that a store owner, for example, in a place without a local mandate will be wearing one. In your experience, are store owners actually wearing a mask? And do you think it's because of the state mask mandate? Because if I'm wrong, I'm wrong, It seems to me that people who wear masks now would be doing so without a mask mandate, and will continue to do so even if the mask mandate is repealed. I might be totally wrong, but I think my sense is, again, that even in those rural communities where you're seeing that, like, I don't think a mask mandate lets you know 100% that the store owners are going to be wearing masks. We just see too many people not wearing masks. And I think those that do wear masks, even in the rural communities, will continue to do so without the state mask mandate. That's just my gut. But if that's not the case, if you're right, which there's no reason to think that you are, then repealing it would be is going to have more impact than I think. That would be bad. The other thing it does, though, is it gives businesses cover. Exactly. Just this, your comment that you just said. This is exactly what I was just about to say. You read my mind. It gives great minds thinking like, look at this. It gives business owners cover, right? To say like, hey, it's not me. This is governor. Governor says we got to put masks on. Even if like a business owner is like, I want people to wear masks in my business so that I don't get my customers or my employees sick. They can blame the governor. Once the mask mandate is repealed, they can't do that. They got to take a stand themselves, which might be hard to do if you're a business owner in a rural community where everybody, thinks it's a hoax. So there's definitely that as another layer. That is the reason it's a mask mandate, and other mandates. Others is a good idea. Also, just gives like you say, Jess, it gives the business owner can require a mask without having to take a stand himself. So I think that's a really smart take. Thank you for that. And of course, is this too. And I wonder if this comes from the same kind of place where they're relying on the state to basically blame the governor while they can still then require masks. So maybe I'm completely wrong about that. We'll have to see. We'll see if they repeal the mask mandate and then numbers start to go up again. Then we'll know what happened. So I appreciate that. I appreciate you guys weighing in on that. I might be less sure of that than I was a few minutes ago. So I appreciate that. Okay, today we also report 54 fatalities, which is bad news. Again, as you know, the pattern of this is we have fewer deaths reported on Sundays and Mondays, just because the paperwork processing. It's so I feel so terrible talking about human death as paperwork processing, but the death certificates don't get uploaded to the databases and processed and classified over the weekends as much as during the week, obviously. So we always get a few on Sunday, Monday, more on Tuesday, Wednesday. And Tuesday and Wednesday are the days when I kind of go, when I look at the data, see how many deaths are going to be. So today, 54. It's a lot. It's more than we had last week. But our 7-day average of deaths actually went down. It was down at 32.7. So that's still right, slightly higher than the daily death toll from heart disease, which is the number one cause of death in Wisconsin. It's about 31 people a day. So we're drifting back down to where it's almost parallel to the leading cause of death. Now, again, that daily death rate won't span the entire 10 months. This is just the past 7 days. So it's not apples and apples. But still, that's kind of my benchmark, and I wanted to get it below that. So we'll see what happens tomorrow in terms of fatalities. Okay, that's the COVID news. If you stick with me, hang around. I have a couple of fun stories. I'm a soccer nerd, as you know, so there's one good soccer story, two good soccer stories. But so stay with me for those and some other more Madison-y important news out of Madison and the state. You just stay with me. We'll be right back after this. Okay, we are back, and on the website today comes a few fun stories for you. This one is really I love stories like this. This guy is named Benny Delgado. He's 22. He's still a senior at Bullitt College. Grew up in Chicago, son of undocumented immigrants. Spent some time in part of his childhood in Mexico, playing soccer. I played in the Chicago Fire youth program, and just has this audacity about him that's really fun. He just wanted to try out for a professional club, so he's 16. He just emailed Peter Wilt, who was running Indy 11 at that time, got him a tryout. A couple years later, he finds out Peter Wilt, the same guy, is starting a professional club in Madison, and says, "Hey, can I work for you?" And Peter was like, "Well, we're not really doing tryouts yet." And Benny said, "Oh no, I don't want to play. I want to work for you." So he's been in on the ground floor for Madison since the beginning, and he is currently he spent the first 2 seasons, and we'll get to that, Andrew. We'll get to that's the next slide. But he's been the player liaison for the first 2 seasons, and will continue to be that role in the next season. Although he's trying to he's going to talk with the brass about maybe taking on a larger role, but on the technical side. But he's basically the guy that like picks up players at the airport and like makes sure that the visitors' locker room is taken care of and that kind of stuff. But he's also been an assistant coach at Evansville High School. He's the JV coach there and the assistant varsity coach, and he's working with agents and scouting and stuff like that. So he's doing a lot of soccer stuff. He's got a lot of balls in the air. And he used that audacity again recently to just like email a few coaches in Mexico. And he's now connected with Benny Ferreira, who is the one of the assistant directors and the technical director, or assistant coaches rather, and technical directors at Atlético San Luis, which is one of the top clubs in Mexico, in their top league, in Liga MX. And he's gotten into this training program now, and this Benny Ferreira has told him, like, come down, my house is your house, come and just like get connected with our club, and we'll find a coaching job for you, and we'll teach you how to coach, and we'll have courses, and they'll get a certification, and then he'll be able to get a certification here in the United States, and he's like I said, 22 years old and well on his way to a professional coaching career. And everybody I talked to about him was like, yeah, he's got it, he's going to get it. Like, so it's really what I love about this story is Fort Madison, this USL League One, this lower level league, is a developmental league for players, right? It's where you can either at sort of the tail end of your career when you're kind of older and want to keep playing, but more importantly, it's the young guys, right? It's the Michael Vang, Noah Fuson, who's getting their first professional go, and then they can move on to bigger things. They can do the same thing with coaches, right? And with other, front office business people. So anyway, it's a fun story. It was a really fun conversation. It ended up being a lot longer story than I thought. So give yourself a few minutes to read this one. But I got some comments from one of his players in Evansville, from Peter, from Connor Kaloya, and it's a fun story. So, and now, Andrew, Jake Keegan has joined for Madison. He's one of the top scorers of USL League One. He helped Greenville triumph to a championship last year with 5 goals in an abbreviated season. It was a much shorter season than usual, so 5 goals was, one of the top scorers of the league. He scored 9 in the first season, 2019. He's a lot of experience. He's 29 years old. He's been several years in the top league in Ireland, so he's got that sort of top flight experience and leadership ability. This is a major signing. Forward Madison's biggest problem has been scoring goals, which is kind of important to do in soccer. They've been really great defensively and just haven't been able to finish those goals. So, and that's been a struggle for the first 2 years. And Andrew now is telling me he actually turned down a new deal at Greenville to come here. I did not know that part. They didn't put that in the press release. That's awesome. Too bad for Greenville. But Greenville got Don Smart, so that's. But what he did say, which I'm sure is true, that he played here at Bree Stevens a couple of times before COVID when the crowd was there and the flock was in full voice, and really loved the atmosphere. I've heard that from a lot of players around the league who love playing in Madison. So he's coming here for that. So Andrew and flock guys, you better keep it up, right? Here's hoping we can actually do that this summer. We'll see. Also today, we have a story on this. Malele Shikasa Anana. This is a wonderful photo by Hetty Lamar Rudd with Malele in the chair there, speaking with her old friend Charlie Daniel. Falk Elementary School on Madison's west side was named after an early administrator, Philip Falk, who is problematic for a lot of reasons. So the school board, there was a committee, a neighborhood committee, that brought this to the school board last year. And finally today, or last night rather, at the school board meeting, it was formally approved that Falk Elementary School will now be renamed Milele Chikasa Anana Middle School, or Elementary School, sorry. Milele is important. She was actually, might have been the first Black person on the school board. I better verify that. Certainly the first Black woman on the school board. She also founded Umoja magazine. Real pioneer in Madison Black-owned media. So frankly, it's not out of line to say that without Miss Milele and Umoja, the Madison365 would have a hard time existing. Like, she just kind of laid that foundation for ethnic media in Madison. So it's a big deal. She just passed away last year. It's a big deal, and it's unabashedly a good thing, I think. Finally today, some bad news out of Milwaukee. Another COVID casualty. Pride Fest is canceled for the second straight year. This was set for June. And, things might be better in June, but my sense is that when you're trying to plan a big event and there's any uncertainty at all, you just can't do it. They're just not sure whether they'll be able to do anything, how many restrictions there'll be, how safe it will be. And they just couldn't do it, threw in the towel for the second straight year. Pride Fest in Milwaukee is canceled, which is a very big bummer. But I respect them for doing it now, and making that really hard decision rather than try to pull something off that might be not safe. So, okay, that is the news for today. Let me make sure that that's everything. Yep, that is everything that I had for you. I appreciate your attention. Go check out those stories. The story, but not to toot my own horn about it. This is not. It's not that my writing the story was all that good. It's just a really fun story. So do yourself a favor, read that story. It's fun. It's at Madison365.org. We'll have more tomorrow morning with the It's Only 10 Minutes podcast, and I'll be back tomorrow at 4 with another update. Appreciate your time and attention. Have a great evening, and we'll see you tomorrow.
This is 365 Media.